Welcome everyone. Huge crowd today. Very, very excited to be doing a presentation with Blue Zone. Thank you, Sebastian and Claudia, for inviting me, and it's a huge pleasure for me to be here. My name's Mohsin. I'm a denim designer. I've been a denim designer for close to 23, 24 years, and I've just released a book, which is quite exciting. So I thought it would be quite nice to show you some pieces that are in the book, but also give a tiny bit of denim history and context to some of the pieces, why they're in the book. So let's go. So that's me. You've already met, or you already know who I am. That's all fine. And yes, I do a consultancy with my wife, Claudia, and yeah, she does a lot of hard work as well. But yeah, I get a lot of credit for the work that she does, which is quite sad. Anyway, so the book's just been released. It's been released for a few months. The one that's come to the show is a special edition version. It's got 50 more pages, so it's quite exciting. Don't worry, Walter. I can get you one of those if you want. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah. So before we go forward, actually, we need to know a little bit more about the past. So let's just do that short story now. So denim is interesting because it leaves an imprint. It's one of the only fabrics that we know about that and leather that leave an imprint, and it's mostly to do with the ring dyeing phase or ring dyeing process of why denim fades. It has a white core. This is actually a table, and you can see in the table itself, you can see the grain line coming through. So it's quite interesting. So yeah, denim leaves an imprint. So it's quite important to remember that. And if we know, and most people say denim is it can be different colors. Yes, it can be. But in way I think it has to be ring dyed. Otherwise, I don't class it as denim. There you go. So yeah, denim, it starts with a riveting story, a bit of a crap tagline, but literally it is a riveting story. So denim, literally, it starts with a riveting story, but you can still find a lot of old pieces still. There's a lot of denim hunter people like Michael Allen Harris and Victor, like Fred Back, who's at this show now, and lots of important people who find lots of historical pieces that even Levi's and other companies know about, but they only know about from drawings or patent drawings. So there's quite a lot of amazing things you can still find. I myself have found things in the most unusual places, like recycling centers, which is quite funny. But I'll show you one of those pieces soon. Anyway, so it does start with Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis. Everyone always talks about Levi's, but no one ever remembers poor old Jacob Davis. So definitely, when you talk about any denim history, you can't mention Levi's without mentioning Jacob Davis as well. So very, very important guy. And Jacob Davis was the actual tailor that came up with the actual jean or the overall, and Levi Strauss was the salesman who gave him the fabric. So that's how the partnership actually began. So there's the actual patent now. So that's the patent. It's a very famous patent. It was the anniversary just last year, and it's been more than 151 years since this sort of patent was actually granted. But we know that workwear and overalls and protection garments have been around for a millennia, millions of years. So it's not anything new, but our story begins about 150 years ago. Okay, so the earliest jeans that we know about, they weren't blue. They were actually a duck canvas. So it's like a canvas, 2x2. And you can still find examples of this still. And it wasn't blue, it was a natural white color, ecru color. Also, they dyed it brown. They also, some have come up with that they think also that it might have used a brown cotton as well. But there's no real evidence of that yet. They started using indigo or natural indigo very soon after. We're talking months, not years, soon after. That's why on the original leather patch that Levi's actually come up with, they clearly say riveted duck and denim clothing. It was both at the same time. So very, very interesting. And also, selvages in that period were much more wider. And around the 1927 mark is actually when they started using the red line selvage, which we all love, and we all think we don't wear jeans without it. But anyway, before that, it was actually a single white line as well, which is quite important. Okay, so the earliest jean that we know about, and there's Levi's actually haven't got the earliest jean. They had to go somewhere else to actually see it. They went to the Smithsonian. But the earliest jean we know about is actually there. And Levi's actually went back and re-looked at the earliest jean, and they actually recreated it again last year. And I'm very lucky to own a pair of this one. I think only about 500 pieces were ever made. So it's a recreation of the very first duck garment. So it's quite sort of cool. And you can go to the Endrime booth, which is in this hall, and have a look at that actual style as well. And yeah, you can, there are lots of early examples that you can find, but they're never in mint-like condition. So having the recreation made, even though it's a repro, obviously there's something quite magical and beautiful about these older styles. But yeah, the repro ones that they have made are as close as they can get to it, down to the measurements, down to the rivets, down to the construction, and also the threads and everything else. So it's quite amazing. And yeah, here's another like repro that they made at the same time. So they've done a washed version as well. And the earliest examples of these rivets also had leather washes on the inside as well, which is quite sort of cool. And yes, these garments were not made for fashion garments. They were made as protection overalls. So they were much bigger. They weren't tight-fitting jeans. They were overalls that you put on top of another pair of trousers for extra like protection. So yes, so up until the 1930s and 40s, that's what they were used for. Okay, and you can still find pieces like this still, but down mine shafts, and they go for hundreds of thousands of dollars now. If you manage to go on one of those auctions from Brit Eaton or any of the online ones, you can still, if you've got the money, you can still buy one, but you just have to have the actual money. Or if you're like me, you buy the reproduction, and that way you got the measurements and you got the specs right. But yeah, there's a few people that have things like this, and it's amazing when they do. But yeah, even down to the buttonholes are done by hand. Even the looms, how they were weaving the fabrics, they weren't perfect, you know. And if you see the samples that Victor's got in the other hall, you see lots of loom chatter, lots of like defects in the actual loom. Like nowadays, when we make any kind of fabric, we circle this area and we cut round it. But back then, they didn't even bother. So it's quite fun to see loom chatter and like sort of like defects in these sort of fabrics. Okay, so after the whole minor period, the gold rush period, silver period finished, cowboys were the next people to adopt workwear and jeans. So there are also so many companies were making jeans at that point, starting to come about. So Levi's and many other companies started to panic, and there wasn't just Levi's, there was Boss of the Road, Carhartt, there was so many other Sweet Ore, so many other important denim brands and like workwear brands, many of them who don't exist now. So the cowboy period was the first period to adopt jeans then. Then also at the same time, it was also like the railroad workers and other workers. And then something amazing happened for miners, cowboys, film, art, music. From the 30s to the 40s, you know, the World War II had just finished as well. We had exported the American freedom. The fact that exportation, the fact that everyone was wearing blue jeans and the workers as well, young kids started to like sort of like rebel, and all the like celebrities in their day started to wear jeans too. So from a very short period in time, jeans became a workwear garment for working to a fashionable garment that young kids were like rebelling in. So quite cool. And you can see here as well, lots of important films happened in this time, and literally such a short period of time in like history where the mindset changed from what jeans were to what jeans are now. Then we get the Summer of Love period, which is similar to the period that we're in now, where everything goes, it's all about self-expression. You know, you go to any fashion show, any kind of garment, and everything's very individual. So we're kind of in this period again now, which is quite exciting. And then we get the designer denim period, which most people love. I'm not too keen on it. This is when jeans started to be imported and being made in Europe, in Italy, also started in like China, these sort of places. So also denim became more fashionable, more mass market. They started producing a lot more denim. So as a result of it, we started getting cheaper qualities of denim as well. But back then, we didn't know that was happening. We just thought, you know, the factory workers had to buy new looms. They started buying more wider looms. They adopted to open-end yarn, which is a slightly more cheaper like variant, a bit more weaker. So you get a characteristic of denim from this period, which is a lot more cheaper and like weaker. Nothing wrong with it. It's just that's what happened. It's only until the early 90s and the early 2000s when we rediscovered ring again, and our Japanese friends are the ones that influenced us on that. Now we're in the denim like renaissance. So we're in a period where we know about the history of denim. We understand about the old way of making from selvages to wide whips. We're now exploring different fibers. It's quite an amazing period to be in, but all the research that we've been gathering from historical garments are now filtering through, and it's quite exciting period to be in for a denim designer like me. It's probably the best period to be in. So yeah, before we go into my archive, it's quite amazing the work that I'm doing and lots of other people are doing. This is a picture from Michael Allen Harris. He had worked out what this jean is. It's an 1890s jean, most likely a Jamal True cotton or Sea Island cotton. So basically what it is, you can't make this again. Yes, you can pattern cut it. Yes, you can speak to a mill and they can engineer the slub pattern. You can get very close to it, but you can't really make this again because the type of cotton, it does exist, but cotton has been genetically modified so much that it's very difficult to get to the older strain. Also, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing when things are genetically modified. Cotton is a very thirsty plant, So they've made a type of cotton which is a lot more GMO. So actually, it's more better for different environments, different climates. So there's a reason why we've genetically modified cotton. But the older strains are the ones we use in these earlier styles that are very, very interesting. Okay, and also talking about slub patterns, nowadays, when we engineer fabrics, we can now engineer how it looks in a slub pattern in a very technical way. This is a computer program which can actually tell you how to design your slub pattern. Now, before 1950, 60, we were doing this purely by spinning, by actually engineering and spinning. Nowadays, you can still engineer and do some amazing spinning technology, but actually we can engineer it so much that we can design the slub pattern as well. So yes, you can get an authentic denim from 1920, use a recycled fiber, use a tencel, use a hemp, still control the slub pattern and make it a 10 ounce, more than possible. I've done it many, many times, but yeah, quite fun. Oh, and this is quite fun. So some people don't know, but when we do the ring dyeing technique, when we're dyeing our warp yarns, basically we have some fresh water baths. It gets dipped maybe in 6 or 7 dips or more. Our Japanese friends go back again and do it maybe 19 or 20 times, and then it's fresh water again. So that's why the core is still white. That's the important thing, because when it goes in, they dry it. It goes in, they dry it. It comes out so quickly and they dry it that it doesn't penetrate all the way through. Very, very fun. Okay, indigo. Let's quickly talk about indigo. This is I put this picture to upset people, but this is actually my friend Abu Bakr Fufana, and he's an indigo dyer from Mali. We actually flew him into the UK to do an indigo class with us about 10 years ago. And yeah, he's an artist. He dyes his own animals. He shears them. He does art with it. Anyway, it's quite upsetting, but actually this animal is perfectly fine. Natural indigo, you can practically drink it. It's all natural. It's made from leaves. But I wouldn't do this with chemical indigo. God no. Okay, but indigo, the original indigo, comes from a plant. This is one from my garden. I haven't stolen this picture from the internet. And that picture there is an original cake from, not the Levi's archive, it could be. I've forgotten where I got it from again, but it dates to 1887. So indigo was imported. That one was imported from the Indus Valley region, which is in modern-day Pakistan. So, you know, we were getting indigo. Most of the indigo that Levi Strauss and our American friends were using was the indigo from the Indus Valley region. So it's quite interesting to know. Oh, you're most welcome. No, please, you're most welcome. Anyway, all good. So also, something quite fun is that many people don't know, but there's a lot of history when it comes to indigo and woad, especially woad in like Europe. So in Europe, we didn't have indigo. We had woad, and it also comes from a plant. It's not as strong as indigo, and you probably don't know, indigo is a dye that's actually very difficult to dye with. It doesn't actually make sense why we use it, because it's so difficult to use. But these guys were using hemp and like linen combinations. So the earliest example, Candiani have recently engineered and made again. It was for a project for like Diesel a few years ago. But it's quite nice to see, you know, from the 12th and 15th century, we were using indigo. But the interesting fact is, this was dyed in the opposite way. So the weft was indigo and the warp was ecru. So the opposite way around. So quite nice to see. I've got a swatch of this fabric, so it's quite sort of beautiful. Okay, and then when it comes to natural indigo, yes, up until 1897 is when we were still using natural sort of indigo. And then after that period, slowly we were introducing a chemical variant, which is a petrochemical. Everything in this room is practically made with a petrol chemical. And the main ingredient for indigo, if you don't know, is benzene, which is rat poison. So in other words, all of these garments, we use poison to make them. It means that not everyone washes all their garments like properly. So the skin is the biggest organ. So there's loads of problems in the last few years, 20, 30 years, that, you know, indigo and the dyes we use in our clothing are from the evilest things ever. So there are solutions happening, but this natural variant, it doesn't happen at all. So this garment from 1880, the famous like Nevada jean, was natural sort of indigo. Okay, and we know lots of history, what machines they were using. I'm into my machines. I have a factory of 30 machines, so I can't be a historian without figuring out what machine we used at the beginning. So the earliest machine that we know about, and we know this very cleverly from a magazine advert that Levi's actually put out. They were looking for female workers, and they said, bring your own sewing machine. It's a Singer number 2 or Grover and Breaker number 1. So these are the two machines. That's a Singer number 2. That picture there is actually from a really famous designer in New York. Bowery Blue. He's the only designer that I know in the world, actually, that has a working Singer number 2. So it's quite amazing. You're welcome to sit. Okay, so yeah, okay, so it's quite fun. Okay, and then just so we're all up to date, how are these fabrics made? Obviously, back in the day, we'd use a shuttle loom, of course, and it goes back and forth. And we use mostly a 3x1 like construction, but the earliest constructions were mostly 2x1 or 2x2s. We adopted to 3x1 roughly in the 20s and 30s, like sort of onwards. But I love a good like 2x1. So yeah, so it's all good. Right, and then here's a little picture just so we're all up to date. This is how it is. So it's like 3 over, 1 under. That's how you get the twill line. And just so we're all on the same page, the warp and weft as well. And 3x1 is that one right in the middle. And this is the earliest duck canvas variant, which is a 2x2. Right. So I'm very lucky because obviously I'm an ex Levi's designer. I used to do work for Okini, so I had it in. So not many designers outside of Levi's get to go and see the archive. And I was very lucky to go to the archive and spend 2 hours there. And Tracy Panic, a really good friend of ours, said to me, "What would you like to see?" And I said, "I want to see the oldest trucker jacket that you have." And I told her exactly what I want to see, the triple pleated blouse. I knew exactly what it was. And I said, I want to see also a sack coat, which they recently found, but the designers have not seen it yet. So I got to see it before them. And I got to see some other things as well. So yeah, but the amazing thing is I'm doing a book later this year, maybe early next year, about the construction of jeans. So it's going to be a step-by-step how jeans are made, historically and even now, and lots of other variants as well. So it's for my construction book. So it's quite fun. And this is my version of the triple pleated blouse. Obviously, I don't like to copy people. I do it my own way. So this one actually has a single needle stitch that catches all of the pleats, which is quite fun. So it's my version. And I spoke to our friends at Denim, and they gave me a really nice duck canvas as well. A similar period correct canvas, which is quite fun. And here it is as well. So if you ever seen a triple pleated blouse, there's one in my archive over there. So do have a look. It's an absolutely beautiful shape, even for men and women. So it's quite stunning. And then here's the Type 1. Everyone knows the Type 1 from the 30s. But this particular one, I found down a like recycling like sort of like center, which is quite amazing. So I happened to be in Pakistan at Artistic Fabric Mills, who aren't showing at this show. And I was in the recycling center. Big piles of garments, all being shredded. And from the corner of my eye, the fabric. I knew the fabric was vintage. And I put my hand in, pulled it out, and it was a bloody Type 1 from the 30s, which is 1936, actually, to be precise. So I was pretty shocked. I was going to Japan on my same trip, and the guy at Babajin told me this is worth about £7,000. I was like, whoa. So quite fun. Nice to find a real one. A really rare one too. And this is a Type 2. I got this one from Salim Ganchi in Pakistan, another vintage collector. So I'm happy to get an authentic Type 2 as well. And then this is my version of a Type 2. I can't help myself. So I look at historical garments. I don't like to copy them. I like to do my own versions of them. And this particular one, I put the dart stitch or a leather patch instead. I put I did a like quadruple pleat, so 4 pleats with circle bar tacks. All single needle tailored, made by me. A lot of fun. There you go. You can see it more closely. So elegant and beautiful on men and women. So yeah, lovely style. These early styles from the 1870s, 1890s, they're all unisex to my understanding. They're all beautiful. They look better on girls than boys, I'll be honest with you. So it's quite funny when you see these styles. It's really quite fun. Even though they were made for men. And this is obviously the original Type 3, the one that most of us have seen in thrift stores. We see this kind of style all the time. Yeah, so yeah, I have many of these. I'm sure all of us have got one of these. There have been lots of variants. But yeah, this is a Type 3. So they're the mini trucker jacket history right there. And then I've done many versions. So this is a Type 1 trucker that I did for our friends at Bossa. So I used one of their colored cotton programs. So it's using a brown cotton. And yeah, we made that for them. So that was quite fun. And then I've done lots of projects. For the last 20 years, I've been teaching lots of students. So all of my students, they listen to me, they watch all my talks, they see all my garments, and they get inspired, and they do creative pattern cutting like this. So some really lovely examples. Every year, there's many examples that are beautiful. And we hired an amazing photographer called Nick Clements from Men's File to photograph the students' work as well, which is quite fun. And this is a jacket that I was wearing yesterday. If any of you saw me, yesterday. This is actually a project that we're doing the second part of called Sept. And this is actually a graphic that Sadia, my wife, did, and I made the jacket, and we got that lasered. Really quite fun project, and excited to do the second one very, very soon. And then I was very lucky also to given permission to get access to other people's archives, from Victor Fredback to Cone Denim, many people, Naked and Famous. So the first volume of my book, which is on the table, has other people's archives in it as well. So not just mine, like it's quite fun. And I'm going to be going to Hong Kong next week to photograph about 70 vintage garments for the upcoming volume 2. This is quite fun. Many of you might not know this style. I'm guarantee you won't know it. This is actually a style called the Krause front jumper. Okay, we know this style. Well, I know this style from this patent. Now, the only evidence that this style ever existed was from this pocket scrap. So my friend, Mike Harris, he happened to find this actual scrap. Then my other friend, Duncan Warpface, bought the scrap. Now, I knew this pocket was the only one that exists. And I knew that it was from this garment, from this drawing. So basically, through clever engineering, I made that style again. So I had access to this for just a few hours. I took all the measurements. I had done historical research on shirts from the 1870s, the collar shape, how wide it was, the sleeve shape, and I kind of guesstimated what it would look like. So this is my interpretation only from this patent drawing. And our friends at Levi's do a very similar way as well. So there's a friend of mine called, anyway, there's a good friend of mine called Miles Johnson, and there's a style that I had in my archive, and he looked at it and he goes, Mohsin, this style doesn't exist. We only got it from a patent drawing. We guessed what it would look like. So there's a lot of guesswork happening still, only from the small bits that we're finding, which is still a lovely exercise to do for a designer like me. I love doing it, and I'm going to do projects like this in the future with a lot of my students as well. Like, give them scraps and say, try and imagine from all the historical research what this garment will look like. Go. So we're going to do lots of fun exercises of that. And yeah, so these are some of the garments that are on my archive booth now. I have more than 3,000 vintage garments. Only 15 I brought with me. But this is one of the first ones that I've got. It's a 1940s Lee sort of overall. We got this other one. This is a Big Mac style as well. Same sort of like period. Absolutely stunning. These fabrics are all 2x1 construction, lightweight construction. They're not heavy. There's a reason. You know, everyone always tells me, like, Mohsin, why can't we find pristine examples? You can, but anything that you find that's been worn, these fabrics were so thin, you can imagine they're on the floor, they're hacking away at rocks, they're doing manual labor. These fabrics are like shirting weight. They're going to rip straight away. So this one's been ripped and repaired, and I've got this one example. This is a beautiful one. The date's wrong. It's probably from 1900. And yeah, so it's a red camel example. Absolutely stunning. It's on my booth. Go and have a look. And yeah, also Cone as well. They're so kind. They let me. I'm very lucky to have seen the Cone archive personally more than 15 years ago. But it's very lucky that Steve, the CEO of Cone, said, Mohsin, you're most welcome to use any pictures you like in your book. So I was like, yes. So yeah. And then one of the oldest examples I've got in my archive is a hemp garment as well. So hemp, linen, we're not too sure, but I reckon it might be hemp. But this is a farmer's smock, which is quite really wide. It would have come with a jacket as well, which I don't have, unfortunately. Maybe I can guess what the jacket will look like. That'll be quite fun. It's a very simple style. There's no back pockets. So in other words, this person was most likely sitting down doing some work. So normally you would only have pockets and details for a reason. If there's no back pockets, obviously he's not using them, so he must be doing some kind of labor where he's sitting. So you can guess some. This is me also in the Levi's archive photographing the oldest duck garment that they have. So again, very, very lucky to have access to things like this. And I took thousands and thousands of measurements, so I will be creating my own version, which is quite exciting later. But I'll definitely be publishing it. And this is the version that they sold last year. They only made 500 pieces. It's the most accurate version of the very first jean or overall that they made. The most up-to-date version. Like the previous versions, they've got the back pocket measurement wrong. So they went back again. They looked at the garment from the Smithsonian, and they recreated it again and figured out, there were a few things that we got wrong a few years ago. So they recreated it again. Lovely. And this is the washed version as well, which is always nice to see a blue version too, an indigo version. This is quite special. And now I've got the replica of this garment with me, but Victor Fredback in his booth has actually got this sample with him. So it's quite amazing. So I'm going to definitely have a picture of this garment together with my own. So I bought this garment, only about 10 or 15 of them, from my understanding, were ever made. So I bought this one. Now, the reason for this back pocket, the reason why it's so special, is between 1873 and 1890, only Levi's were allowed to use like rivets. So other companies were coming up with ingenious ways to add strength without using like rivets. So this is a very good example of one, and it's stunning. And Victor on his booth in hall number 6 has got the original one there. So definitely take a look at both. If you want to look at my one, it's a bit more, you can see what's going on. His one's a bit washed out and worn in, stunning. And yeah, so historical research is something that I do a lot of now. And this is another example. This is a kid's Wrangler jacket with a circle bar tacks. This is my interpretation of it. So I recreated it, but I did it with a printed logo, which is quite fun. That's actually words going down there, which is quite fun. And then this is the actual piece that I've got. The Rising Sun actually made this piece. They called it a dead grass like sort of repro. So yeah, Victor Fredback got the real one, just maybe 100 meters over there, which is quite amazing. There you go. And it's got little details on the inside, and all of these details were all in patent drawings as well. So we can historically find out a lot of details from patent drawings. And then a lot of things, actually what's happening in this period as well, even though Levi's are important, but a lot of these companies were copying each other, a lot of cross-pollination, as I call it, going on. So this is actually a Levi's style, and actually, even though they had the patents for rivets, they most likely got inspired by another company and copied them. Because only non-Levi's companies were doing dart-like stitches. So this is a Levi's garment with a dart stitch. Very unusual. So there's a lot of inspiration from other brands and interpretations going on. Very cool. And also our friend Victor, who's on at the show, he also allowed me to to use some of his images for my archive book as well. So very, very lucky and very, very thankful. And spoke to lots of people. This is Mike Hodis, really famous denim designer. He told me a story once where he said, I found the oldest mini jean he's ever come across, a sample sale garment. And I said, have you got a picture of it? He goes, I do. He goes, I sold it straight away to a Japanese seller. I have got pictures. And he sent me the pictures. And yeah, it's the most stunning, it's a boss of the road sample jean. And what they used to do, even Levi's did it, they wouldn't make big samples. They would make samples of the jeans and take them to salespeople and get orders from it. So this is a mini interpretation of a boss of the road jean. And look how slubby it is. It's stunning, 1870s. Very, 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 very thankful for Mike to send us these images and allowing me to get published. Really quite fun. And yeah, this is the Nevada jean you saw earlier from Levi's. And I've done lots of projects. This is a project I did last year. A good friend of mine called Justine, she grew her own indigo. She grew her own linen, and then she got one other person to weave it and spin it, and then she got me to make it. So only about, I think, 3 or 4 people were involved in this entire jean. That's it. So 3 or 4 people, not 3 or 4,000, 3 or 4 people. So it's quite amazing. So I got to make that style. And more projects that I'm doing more and more is more zero waste collections. I'm doing a lot of this kind of work. This is probably the 4th year that we've been doing zero waste in jacquard weaving. So this is actually woven, it's not knitted. And when you do jacquard weaving, you can have multiple layers at the same time. So you can construct an entire jean that has the pocket bag, the front panel and the back pocket all at the same time. So all you do is you cut that, and that's a leg. And the only seam work, the sewing work you're doing is just the front rise and maybe the waistband. So there's lots of clever engineering we're doing. This is another style that's on the archive booth as well. This is a style also based off a patent drawing. We got our friend Ben in Canada, a sort of Vapiano, to basically get inspired by a patent drawing. So I gave him a patent drawing, and he did this for me. We were doing a collection for Garsim Denim, who aren't at this show, unfortunately. And I designed the fabric, and I gave the fabric to Ben, and he made this style for me. So quite beautiful. I'm lucky to own the style as well. It's quite fun. And this is the style that I was wearing yesterday. It's a hemp jean, hemp tencel blended jean, and I did a continuous stitch, which is a quite beautiful detail for a hemp leaf. And this is I do lots of crazy shit. I like designing stuff to push it. So this is my interpretation of a crazy jean where basically the back pocket and the belt loops are all joined in one panel. It's a bit crazy, but to be honest, it's quite fun as well. And I've got lots of women's wear as well. I've got lots of women's wear styles from the 30s, the dawn of when women's wear denim started to happen. Obviously, women were mostly wearing men's jeans up until this point, but then they started to engineer them for women as well. So this is actually a high-rise jean. It's got a women's wear yoke construction where it's the opposite way round. Beautiful pockets, 2x1 fabric. It's about 9.5 ounce. It's stunning. I actually recreated it for a Carved in Blue project about 5 years ago. And yeah, this is the famous twisted jean. It's also here as well. It's been a big like resurgence on these dark manipulated, corkscrew, twisted, manipulating jeans. So a lot of my students that I teach are very interested in this kind of work. So I shared the pattern quite recently, and it's quite fun. But what's beautiful about this was made in 1999. Up until this point, all jeans were really baggy, and the hip-hop period was really big. It was a bit mental. So Levi's honed it down. They concentrated on what was most important, the red tab, their pockets. They basically exaggerated and accentuated all the important things that make a jean. And they also got inspired by the corkscrew twisted skewing effect, and a really clever designer designed it as well. Croft is her name. So it's quite amazing. And there's less fabric on the front, more fabric on the less fabric on the back, more fabric on the front, so you can bend your knees much more easier. Stunning. I also spoke to our friends at Naked and Famous, Bayzed and Risa, sent me photographs of their latest 40-ounce jean, the prototype that they made probably about 4 or 5 years ago. They're finally going into production now. They're only making 40 of these, the world's heaviest jean that we know. Hopefully I'll snag one, hopefully. And yeah, and then little things to end off on. These are little things that we don't talk about in the denim world, but they're important. When we make anything in a factory, you would often find that we do it with a continuous stitch, but without telling you. So here's an example. This is a 1940s Levi's jean. I photographed it thinking it was really cool. Only later, when I was home, I realized what was going on. This leather patch is sewn at the same time as the waistband stitch. So when they're doing the waistband stitch, they put the leather patch in, they sew around it, and they carry on. So this is something that Levi's were doing without telling anyone at all to speed up production. But then I thought that the continuous stitch is so beautiful. It's such an easy way of making product, just a little bit of thinking beforehand. So when I make anything now, I do it with a continuous stitch, and I make it obvious that it's a continuous stitch. And then you find it on coin pockets. Even when I was teaching how to make jeans in one of my classes, one of my students went round the whole leather patch and came off again. So doing a continuous stitch is a beautiful thing. Even this shirt pocket, I start on the edge and come off and make a little mistake and come off again, a little diamond effect. So when you make anything, try and engineer a continuous stitch in there without telling anyone. And it's quite a fun thing to find. Even this is a really old style. This is from 1874. It's a jacket. It's such a cinch back. Now, to the untrained eye, it looks like a normal cinch. But to someone like me, I spotted it straight away. This cinch buckle was attached when they were doing the waistband stitch. So you can see when they were doing it, they came off, went round, they came off. So there's amazing details you can find from these historical garments that will definitely get inspiration for the future of how we construct jeans in a faster, cleaner, more sustainable way. So yeah. So sorry, 1890. But it's amazing to see continuous stitches were employed even in this period. And yeah, you got to know your stitches. Like I'm a British designer. I learned in centimeters and like millimeters, but for the last 15 years, I've converted to inches. So even when I measure my house, measure a table, my God, everything's in inches. I've kind of screwed myself up. But for European designers, it's very important we understand it's not a 4mm stitch, it's a bloody 3/16. You know, it's not a 6mm, it's a quarter. We need to understand these measurements and become better designers the moment we understand them. We can start talking in the same language that these engineers and designers were doing more than 150 years ago. Cool. And then rivets. You know, I'm a firm believer now that we shouldn't be using rivets going forward at all. So the future really is a non-riveted jean, which is a sad thing to say, but you know, it could be a circle bar tack. I'm one of the only designers I know about who's actually invested in a machine that does this. So, you know, I'm invested in a machine that can do a circle bar tack. So that's quite fun. And then fibers, you know, the future might not be in cotton either. You know, tencel, organic cotton, maybe. It's a bit of a myth though, only because only 1% is really organic. And then cottonized hemp, definitely a big future there. And recycled, to me, it's all about recycled like, sort of fibers. It's not, and hemp maybe, and linen, not really cotton. Sorry, all our cotton friends, it's probably not the future. And then the zero waste, that other zero waste slide should have been here. But basically, I've been doing lots of zero waste pattern cutting for the last 5 or 6 years. I did a big project for Cone Denim, where I made an entire collection of like 13 styles with literally zero waste philosophy. Yes, the yellow is waste, but I've done versions with no yellow as well. So quite fun. And I gave one of these pieces to the Levi's archive as well when I visited them as a gift. So now it's there in their archive based on one of their type 2. So they were very, very pleased to get that. And yeah, here's the pattern for that trucker jacket there. Very successful pattern, if any of you know about pattern cutting and not wastage. If you notice, I put the sleeves going across, they're all straight. I got rid of that in the end, I didn't need it. Also, I put dart manipulation in certain areas to give more shaping. So there are ways, if you understand pattern cutting and you're quite relaxed about grain lines and doing things that you shouldn't really do, because I had to really do things in a completely different way. The way I've been taught, I had to not do it again. So it's quite mad. And then there we go. And then lots of examples of zero waste here as well. This is the oldest garment we've ever found. It's on a Chinese sort of mummy. It was a zero waste garment as well. And more about 3D jacquard. You can see how the different weaves are there. And there more examples of a chocolate jacket that one of my students did. And yeah, polyester, the evilest thing in the world, man. So I know I'm over time, just another like few more minutes. But basically, you know, this label should be in every single garment, to be honest. Warning, this garment contains 100% polyester, which is a fiber-like derivative made from crude oil, sheds microplastics if swallowed. Should be in every single Sweaty Betty, Adidas, Puma, most of the denim here, to be honest. Anything in polyester should have should have that in it. And yeah, more zero waste, exciting stuff there. You know, laser printing, laser stuff's been around for a long time, but my claim to fame, I did the very first laser collection for Levi's more than 20 years ago. That's my claim to fame. So no one can take that away. No one can take that away from me. But I engineered all the patterns and did all the graphics. This is when laser was crude. You could only get a few colors before it burnt. So it's quite fun. And then the future also might be in printing. I'm going out to China in 2 weeks' time to do a printed collection for our friends Stellar Blue. So I'm going to be engineering patterns to be printed. This machine's amazing. It prints also the back of the fabric at the same time. So this could be exciting. So yeah, there we go. All of you have passed. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm about 7 minutes over. Apologies. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested, thank you. If you're interested in seeing anything, I've got my books over there. There's a book on the table you're welcome to look through. And yeah, come and say hello. Thank you again.